Hello again, welcome back to the channel. Glad you could join me. Um, so I recently finished quite a few Vampire Hunter D books. The most recent one I finished was actually Mercenary Road, but we're going to obviously talk about Fortress of the Elder God first. So in Fortress of the Elder God, we start out with several people. They're taking basically a plane from a place on the frontier. They're going to the capital. There are several people who are getting on board this plane. There's Bierce, Jan, Maria, Mr. and Mrs. Stowe, Toto, Weitzman, a sheriff, a deputy, and a suckling. The suckling was a man who was bitten by a vampire. He wasn't entirely turned to a vampire, but he was caught, and they're transferring him to the capital so that they can experiment upon him. So they get into this, basically this aerial conveyance, and they fly over a place called the Playground. Now, in times past, the Playground was the haunt of nobility who worshipped a godlike being. You can kind of think Cthulhu, because that seems to be the vibe that the author is giving out here. We come later to find out there's tentacles involved, and the Elder God is more mystical, metaphysical than actual reality kind of thing. So there's that going on. Anyway, they worshipped this being. And as the passengers are flying over this area, now this area was laid to waste by the armies of the Sacred Ancestor, because the nobility that were there in the Playground were experimenting on themselves, and they raised this Elder God. They had come to find life not worth living, but while they wanted to die, they were vampires, and so it was very hard to kill them, or at least it was very hard to keep them dead. And so they turned to worshiping this being, the Elder God, and that was a perversion to the Sacred Ancestor, and so he sent his armies in, and they wiped out everyone. The Sacred Ancestor himself went into the fortress where the Elder God was worshipped, and he managed to defeat it, not kill it, but defeat it. And he was injured in the process. He was injured badly enough that he needed like 100 years to recuperate. So anyway, this group is going over the Playground. The pilot has a heart attack, and he crashes the plane, manages to land it. The only person who suffered a major injury was Mr. Stowe. He ended up with a broken arm. Everybody else cuts and bruises kind of thing. Well, they don't know what to do, because they're now in the middle of this place called the Playground. There's monsters. Right now they're safe, but who knows? And they have limited food and water, but they've got to get out of this place. In their wish to get out of here, they end up coming across D. And they have a warrior, Bierce, in their number. Jan is a fighter as well, though he is a mobster. We have the sheriff, and Weitzman. Weitzman is a law enforcement officer. So they do have people that know what they're doing. But the sheriff and the deputy don't last too long. And Weitzman refuses to ditch the suckling. His job is to get the suckling to the capital so that they can experiment upon it. And they have Toto, who's a boy, Mr. and Mrs. Stowe, they're an older couple, and they have Maria, a woman, in their highly capable woman, but not necessarily a warrior or a fighter, but she shows herself to be capable later. So we have all these people, but they're not really equipped to go through this particular area. They try to hire D when they come across him, but D refuses. However, Toto steps up. Toto the boy steps up and says to D that he'll hire him for as much money as he has, which turns out to be pittance. But D accepts the offer. Now, he does say that there is a stipulation. He says, yes, you can come with me, but I have a job here to do first. He's looking for this fortress to finally destroy the Elder God. And these others, he says, we have to do that first. Otherwise, you can go off on your own. So they end up following D. And there are a number of places during the story where they're sitting there going, oh, no, how could we be in this situation? What are you going to do about it? And D says, I told you could go off on your own. You were the ones that followed me. Anyway, when they get to the fortress, now there are obviously things that happen along the way to the fortress. This is definitely not a safe area for them to be in, but they finally arrive at the fortress of the Elder God. Now, when they arrive at the fortress, suddenly the army that the sacred ancestor had at the time when he defeated the cultists and the Elder God in the first place, they suddenly show up. They've been sitting there basically in hibernation, waiting for someone to come and to make sure that the Elder God doesn't get disturbed, doesn't get awoken. So not only do we have D, who has to navigate his way through this fortress and the traps and the things that were left behind to defend the Elder God, plus he's got all these people with him that are relying upon him to keep them safe. But now we've got they're inside the fortress, and the fortress is besieged from outside by the forces of the sacred ancestor. This is a good one, very enjoyable, very quick read. This is not a part 1, part 2 kind of situation where it can get long, or like we had with the Tyrant's Stars, but it's a very much more contained story. There's not a lot of things that are going on outside of the situation here. We have D going through this desolated area to get to the fortress of the Elder God, but we also have this other group of people that end up coming along with him to make it a little bit more interesting. We also get to see D in the situation that he's in. So when he comes in to the situation where he runs into these people, he initially turns them down. He says, no, I've got something to do here. You guys go on by yourself. But then, they offer to pay him money, and he says, okay, but I have this other thing to do first. And they're like, no, you will come, you will guard us, and then you can go back. And he says, okay, then deal's off. And as he's leaving, this young boy, Toto, basically saves the entire group by saying, I'll pay you. I'll pay you everything I have. And again, it shows to me this characteristic that D has where, yes, he's stoic. Yes, he is single-minded. Yes, he is very powerful. But at the same time, he kind of tests people to see if what they are wanting to protect or what they are wanting him to do is important enough for them to put everything they have on the line. And so it shows that Weissman, who was from the capital, he had money to pay D, but he wasn't willing to put his all into it. Whereas Toto, who had almost no money, was willing to sacrifice everything basically that he had in order to keep everybody in the group safe. So there is that, plus the situation where the resolution of the story is very different than you think going in. There's a lot that goes on with the Elder God, and the Elder God's abilities end up being manifested at various times through the story. So it's interesting how that works, and how the Elder God, though wounded and defeated initially by the Sacred Ancestor, was still operative, was still able to insert its influence into the story and to affect the outcomes of things. So that's it for Fortress of the Elder God. Like, share, subscribe, all that other stuff. Comment down below, and until next time, enjoy what you're reading.